Hi, it's Dougie Wood, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can analyze the sentiment of an email that you receive using Power Automate's AI tools. Now, this could be used for all sorts of different things, whether it be feedback from customers about projects or products or services, and you can then take that and store that in a location that can be analyzed with AI to determine whether it's positive or negative. Based on those results, you could then choose to potentially automate further steps like emailing your kind of customer engagement team to say there's been some negative feedback, please follow up with the customer, or maybe emailing your marketing team there's been good feedback to say maybe follow up with this client to get a case study. Now, the very first thing I need to do is I need to build an area that I can store the data that I'm capturing from my AI tool. Now, my choice for this is going to be a SharePoint list because it's free. However, you could put it into an Excel spreadsheet, or you could put it into, say, Dataverse or a SQL table, wherever you want to store your data. But I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to go to office.com and then in my search bar look for lists, and this is the nice new pretty interface for SharePoint lists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my new list. I'm going to click on new list and I'm going to say blank list, and the name of this is just going to be my AI sentiment. Now, I could call this a project feedback, I could call this customer feedback or something like that, and this is basically where I'm going to be storing my information. I can give it a little description to say what I'm storing in there. You can pick a color if you like, or even a little icon. Just to symbolize what it is that you're doing. So maybe I'm going to use this little bot thing, and then I'm going to say where I'm going to save this list to. So I'm going to store this actually against my I'll store this against my marketing team as an example, and then click on create. So the first thing I need to do is create the columns which I'm going to use to store the output of my AI sentiment. So I've already got the likes of my title field, but I'm going to store in here a set of other text which is output by my AI. So first I'm going to create a new column. So all I need to do is click on add column, and I've got a couple of different types of column in here, but to keep things simple I'm going to use mostly the single line of text within here. So the first thing is the probability of the overall text is negative. So I'm just going to call this my prob overall text is negative. So this will give me a probability that the overall text that is contained within the email is actually negative. So I'm going to click on save, and that's going to create that column. The next column I'm going to create is going to be the probability that the overall text is neutral. So I'm going to call this my prob overall text is neutral, like so. And then from there, I'm then going to say, going to create another column, which is going to be, and you guessed it, the probability that my overall text is positive. Then click on save. The next column I'm going to create is the probability that the sentence is negative, and the probability the sentence is neutral, and the probability the sentence is positive. So again, I'm just going to create another single line text. Probability the sentence is negative, and the probability sentence is neutral. And then another column, probability that the sentence is positive. Then there's a couple of generic kind of columns that we're going to create as well as part of this output. So we have the sentence sentiment, and we have the overall text sentiment as well. Let's refresh that to get rid of that. So then we're going to put overall text sentiment. Now, sometimes what's also worthwhile including as well in these types of things is what is the actual text that we're taking from the email. So I'm also going to have a multiple lines of text box, which is actually going to be my email body. And this is basically the actual text. So if I wanted to do in my analysis, actually look up and say, well, what actually was it that the email? So if it was something that was really negative or really positive, I could actually look at the email to see what was actually inside that email without having to dig through my emails again. And I'm also going to say who the email is from. So this is going to be a really useful way that I could also do some further automation in the future if I wished to say, well, if something was really negative, I had a really low sort of negative score, I might want to automatically email them straight away to say, sorry, we're looking into this and we'll come back to you if something's really positive. I might want to send them an automated email and say, great, thanks for this. Please fill out further this customer feedback form or something like that. So now we've got our table, our list, so to speak, set up. I can now get work on actually creating my Power Automate workflow. So the first thing I need to do is actually go back to office.com and go to Power Automate. And this is going to open up the Power Automate editing studio. Now that I've got my list all created, all I now need to do is start creating my Power Automate workflow. So now what I'm going to do is navigate to Power Automate and click on the Create option, click on Automated Cloud Flow, and I'm actually just going to skip this option. I prefer to do this actually on the next screen. So the first thing I need to do is give it a name. So I'm going to call this my AI email sentiment. And then from here, what I need to do is actually create my trigger. And the trigger is actually going to be an Office 365 Outlook trigger. And it's going to be when a new email arrives. Now, you could do this based on a shared mailbox. You could even do it based on a certain folder within inside of a particular mailbox. But the next thing I'm going to do is I now need to take that email and I'm actually going to convert this into plain text. So if I use the HTML to text action, which is here, I'm going to select that, and then within this box I'm going to then insert the body of the email that I've received. So under when a new email arrives, I'm going to select on body. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because the email is going to contain a lot of different kind of HTML tags, header tags, things like that, which we just don't want to be putting through our analyzer of our positive and negative sentiments. So now we've got the plain text. The next thing we need to do is then use the AI Builder connector. And what I'm going to be using here is analyzing positive or negative sentiment in the text. So I'm going to select on that, and then the first thing I want to do is select the language. So I'm doing this all in English, but it would work the same if I was doing this in a different language. Now I'm going to pass in the text. So I'm going to pass in the text from my HTML to text. This is the plain text output. So now what I've done is I've got my email, I've got it converted into plain text, and I'm now passing this into the AI Builder. The final thing I'm going to do is I now need to get the output of this. I'm going to insert this into that list that I created before as a way of being able to see all of that data. So to now inject the data that I've now analyzed into my list, I actually need to go onto the SharePoint connector. So if I look for SharePoint, there isn't a Microsoft list connector just yet. It's all still through SharePoint because the list is basically just SharePoint list with a nice pretty front end. So I'm going to select on SharePoint, and what I actually want to do is I want the create item action. So I'm going to select create item, and it's going to say, okay, well, what site does it relate to? So my list is actually on a site called Intranet Hub. Let me see if I've got it on here. There it is. So these are all my test sites, and I've got that list set up on my Intranet Hub, and I've got it called my AI sentiment. So I select that list. Now it's automatically going to show me that all of those columns that I created before. So I now need to start populating this with some of the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to populate the title field, and I might use a subject of my email. So I can scroll down here and I can see the subject of the email that comes in. So it's make it nice and easy to identify. Then I've got the probability that the overall text is negative. So this is just the one that's got across the top here. So I'm going to select that. And the same goes for probability overall text is neutral. Probability overall text is positive. I'm just going to select all of these fields that these are the output. So I'm going to just search on here for the overall text sentiment, who the message is from. So I'm going to just search on that, just speed this process up a little bit. The email body, so I'm just going to search for body. Be careful, don't put the body of the analysis. We want the body of the actual email, so I'm just going to put the body of the message in here. Then we've got the probability that the sentence is negative. Probability of the sentence is negative. Whoops. Of course, this is actually going to wrap it in a statement, that actually every sentence that it finds. Now, to make this easier, I'm actually just going to remove this. If you wanted to do this, so you wanted analysis per sentence, you would need to use like this apply to each, which would basically cycle through all of the sentences that it finds in the text. I'm actually just going to skip over this. So ignore these columns, but if you did want to do that, you could analyze the sentiment for each of the sentences and then inject that in, but you'd probably then want to create a item inside the SharePoint list per sentence. But I'm just going to do the overall text to keep it a bit simpler for this example. So then all I need to do is click on save, and that's my workflow ready to go. So I just need now to send an email to my inbox. So I'm getting my email up here. In the subject line, I might put something like great project feedback. I'm going to say something like, hi, Dougie, great work on that SharePoint project. I am really happy with the outcome. Thank you very much. Kind regards, Dougie. Then I just need to send this to my email address. So I'm going to type that in and then I'm going to click on send. Now back inside of Power Automate, I can go back out of here and I can see the run history of my workflow. So I'll click on refresh. Now this might just take a couple of minutes to actually trigger, especially if it's the first time that's running. So I'm just going to pause the video for a second. So there we go. We've got it to open up now. So this is now it run. So you can see the email has arrived. We've turned the text into plain text. We've analyzed it, and we've got the analysis all on here. The probability the overall text is positive is almost 100%. So it's 99% sure that that text in that email is actually positive. And then we've created our item inside of our list. So I'm just going to jump into our list. And then you can see in here, this is what the outcome would then look like. So there's a couple of test runs there as I was trying to get the it triggered off before. So I'm just going to remove those ones, and I'm just going to look at the actual one which I know is the fully working one. I sent through a couple of test runs to try and get it started, and I would advise, by the way, it's a great way of actually getting a workflow started. If you post in a few items, it seems to get things speeding up a little bit. So there we go. So we've now got our sort of title of our email is a great project feedback. You can see that the percentage of the overall text is positive. So it's 99% sure that it is positive. The overall text sentiment is positive, and who it's from. There's got my email address, and it's also got the email body as well. So it's showing exactly where this has come from. So things I could do from this, I could further on that Power Automate workflow. So I could do a condition and say if the overall text sentiment is positive, send an email to someone, whereas if it's negative, maybe send an email to someone else. I could also style this up a little bit. So maybe I could use a little bit of sort of formatting to actually make this go, say, green if it's positive. So for example, on this drop down, I could say column settings and say format this column, use conditional formatting. Set the rule to say if the overall text sentiment is equal to positive, then we're going to set this to a nice green color. then click on save. So it then stands out. So using some formatting to give it a bit of a RAG status, so we can see all the positive ones, we'd be able to see all the negative ones as well, and then all that information is there readily available. I can also choose to export this information directly into Excel, so if I want to do further analysis, I could do that from there as well. I hope you found this video useful, and there's plenty of ways that you could potentially use this. If you've got any questions, feel free to use the comments feed below. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more future tips and tricks of using Power Automate.